if that's true or not.
I've been recording way.
But I'm interested that you
just figured out how to make my computer run way better.
yourself appealed to international law as a base.
Well, what I'm looking at is the whole of the last 100 years.
The Balfour Declaration is not exactly international law, by the way. It was a letter, I think.
It was maybe not law, but it was a declaration. It was an assumption and a declaration that was done by Lord Balfour in Great Britain. At that time, this land was under the British mandate. And he said the Jews should have the land that was theirs from 3,800 years ago. It was simple as that.
Right. And I'm not debating that. I'm just
listening to these fucking dipshits.
International law. It was a colonial power saying.
Then later it was international law under the League of Nations, under the United Nations. And then because of the victories that Israel had against those who tried to annihilate them, and it wasn't just that they were trying to take a little piece of their land, they tried to annihilate them. And there is still to this day the shouts of from the river to the sea. And Tucker, that means only one thing, not the shrinking of Israel, but the annihilation of Israel.
I don't think you can say that you know what it means, actually, because you don't know what's in people's hearts. But from the Euphrates to the Nile, I think that's right. And that would include basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant, so that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be.
I'm sure it would go that far. It would be a big piece of land, but here's the point.
It would be a lot of places that are now countries.
But this particular area that we're talking about now is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose. We can look at it that way.
The people he
Christian
chose.
Zionism. I want to go back because that's where we started.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all. But I don't think that's what you're talking about here today.
What would be fine? Well, it's exactly what we're talking about today.
But here's what I don't think
you think it would be fine if the state of Israel took over all of Jordan?
They don't want to take it over. They're not asking to take it over.
But you're saying that the reason that Israel is legitimate, has this inherent right to exist, is in part because God gave it to his people. And I am going to the same Bible that you're referring to and noticing that that is a huge piece of land. So if God gave them that land, then they have a right to take it now by your definition, unless I'm missing something.
Well, I think you're missing something because they're not asking to go back to take all of that, but they are asking to at least take the land that they now occupy, they now live in, they now own legitimately, and it is a safe haven for them.
Well, may I ask though, because you're explaining what Christian Zionism is and your theological beliefs. And I think you just said it would be fine with you if the state of Israel took all of Syria, all of Lebanon.
That's really not exactly what I'm trying to say.
I'm asking,
Tucker.
Is that what you said? I thought that's what you just said.
It was somewhat of a hyperbolic statement in that if that's what you feel like that we're talking about, but it isn't. We're talking about this land, the state of Israel, now lives in and wants to have peace.
Telling him how he feels.
They're not trying to take over Jordan. They're not trying to take over Syria. They're not trying to take over Iraq or anywhere else. But they do want to protect their people.
It's a contract between God and his people. And I'm telling you that contract.
That's the part that drives me crazy.
Tract of land that is much larger than the current nation state.
So you may be a bigger Zionist than even the Jews are that live in Israel.
I'm trying to.
That was funny.
You understand the implications of your theology for geopolitics because you're saying that the present government of Israel has a moral right to take over what are now other people's countries.
No, I didn't say that.
Then what are you saying?
I'm simply saying that
gotcha.
the people who live in Israel, I think, have a right to have security, have safety. They have a right to be able to live in this land that they have a connection to for 30.
I told myself when I said a prayer that I would not get annoyed, but as someone who is...
No, people have a right to a land. That's like saying Lutherans demand their own country. Tom Cruise demands his own country. Nobody can demand their own country, but we still gave into them a little bit because they bought it.
Father of daughters, when I see child molesters hiding in Israel and escaping American justice, I think I have a right to safety in my country too. So you can understand that I think most people feel they have a right to safety.
That was really good.
I do think
Tucker.
Israel has a right to safety, and
Good job, Tucker. That was really good.
I hope that for them, and I'm sincere, but I'm an American, and I have a right to safety in my country too.
Of course you do.
Agree? And I think, so, but I just want to get to this point. If Israel were to say, God gave us in Genesis 15, all of Lebanon, all of Syria, all the way up to Iraq, would that be legitimate in your view?
I don't think in this particular day and time they're asking for it.
Would it be legitimate?
I'm not sure that it would be.
Why? Because you just said that God gave it to them.
That there
God
is
did give it to him. He better get
an
on
understanding that the people of Israel today, now if they end up getting attacked by all these places and they win that war and they take that land, then that's a whole nother discussion.
Here's what's funny about the people that push these Zionists. They don't see why it would make anybody else mad.
But you and I started out.
War.
There's a reason why every country's trying to blow them up because they hate them.
We started talking about.
Listen, every country in the world does not just gang up and try to kill you all because it's a mind virus. It is
something simple. Christian Zionism.
But it turns out it's not simple because the core of Christian Zionism, you said, and I'm quoting you, is the understanding, the belief, the theological understanding that Jews have a moral and legal, we went through the legal,
biblical,
moral deriving from the biblical, from the promises in our Bible, which we share with the Jewish people, the first part of it, the Old Testament, that it derives from God's promise to the Jews. And so I have two questions. What are the borders of that? And who are those people in 2026? And you're not the first person I've asked, but you're the most reasonable, most gentle, most theologically informed person. So I'm really hoping for an answer. The first question was the borders. I can't get an answer. Those borders are. So I'm going to give up. But the second question is every bit as pressing. Who are the people? Who are the modern? Yes. Who are the?
This is the best part because when they wrote all this, because it's illegal to do a DNA test in Israel.
Descendants. So we know, and I believe, and I agree with you as a Christian, that God promised this land from modern day Iraq to modern day Egypt to this people, the Jews, to Abram's, actually not to Abram's descendants, as it says in Genesis 15. Who are his descendants now and how do we know who they are?
I think they're the Jews and we know who they are because they've always been a Jewish people. There has been an unbroken line of Jewish people and they've lived in this land for 3,800 years. Sometimes not very many of them, because they were chased out all over the world. They were hunted down. They were almost annihilated during the Holocaust. They came back. To this day, Tucker, they represent any Jews there are in the whole world.
Please,
no,
I understand. First of all, the greatest genocide of Jews no one ever mentions was by the Romans, where they were literally banned from Jerusalem for 500 years.
Yeah, of course.
It's all awful, and I'm opposed to all of that. I'm opposed to mass killing of anybody, period. I'm opposed to killing.
You say that.
I mean it, and I hope we can agree on that.
I believe that.
My question is, and it's not a bumper sticker answer, it's a sincere answer, how do we know? Because what you're saying is that
these people are morons. It's because it's so ingrained into their religion. It's just like trying to tell people God don't exist. Telling an Orthodox Jews saying that they can't have that land. That's their whole religion. They wake up in the morning, they jerk off to it. That's what they do. That's their thing, is getting this land and rebuilding a temple, but they have to bring back their Messiah. That's the part they leave out. In order for Jewishness to bring back the Messiah, which is like 15 more minutes, I think, they have to end the world, rebuild the temple.
People have a title to a highly contested region. They own it in some deep sense. So I think it's fair to ask, who are they? And how do we know? So the current prime minister's ancestors weren't from here within recorded history. He has no deed. Bibi Netanyahu, on one side, his family's from Poland. They're from Eastern Europe. So how do we know that he has a connection to the people who God promised the land to, Abram's descendants? How do we know that?
Well, if you take the genealogies that come not only from the Old but the New Testament, you see that there is a historical connection through the entirety of the Old and the New Testament that details the Jewish connection to this land.
Does that include Bibi's family? How do we know that if his family comes here?
Scattered,
but how do we know it's the same people? Why is that crazy? If you say to me,
if they speak the same language, if they worship the same God, if they follow the same Bible, if they follow the same cultures and traditions, and they always pray next year in Jerusalem, and they pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and they pray facing toward Jerusalem.
This is how to tell if your olive oil is fake.
Does that not give you a little bit of a clue as to who they are?
Let's go through those things, because I would like to have a rational This is a conversation I've wanted. Bless you. Thank you for doing this. Let's just go through those things. So one of the things I admire most about Israel is they resurrected a dead language in 1948. Good for them.
Well, they really didn't resurrect it. It was...
I'm sure that works out well for them and their legal bullshit.
Existent.
That's that's a compliment. I'm not slighting.
No, but it is the first time in all of human history that a language has survived through this length of time. I would call it, you might not, but I would call it a miracle. One of many.
Netanyahu, I think it's wonderful as someone who loves language. Netanyahu's parents did not speak Hebrew. They didn't live in this region. Netanyahu, the founders of this country, were mostly secular. Some of them were avowed atheists. They were not.
Netanyahu, it's illegal to do his DNA to prove this point that Tucker's bringing up. That's why he keeps mentioning it.
Not praying for the peace of Jerusalem. They weren't praying at all because they didn't believe in God. There's no genealogy linking their...
And Mike Huckabee here, he thinks to bring back his Messiah in Israel, they have to rebuild this temple on the mound, the third temple. And that's where Mike Johnson comes in, why I hate him. Because he is working with these fucking idiots down in Texas to get these red heifers. They need to get these red heifers, and it all connects to the Mormons and their white horse prophecy, which is gay, too. It's all gay. And our leaders are all pedophile, satanic, XXX, Harry Potter perverts.
Their families to the people of this land 3,000 years ago. They're not. So how do we know, since they didn't share a language, they didn't share a religion, they had no religion whatsoever, how do we know that they had a right to come here from Eastern Europe?
But they were scattered to Eastern Europe. They were scattered all over the world. There were many in Ethiopia, they were in Russia, they were in Poland, they were throughout Asia. Jews were all over the place, but they were still Jews.
Let me get to the nub of the question, since again, a lot of money is at stake. Land is very valuable. Israel has a lot of resources. By the way, if you're accused of a crime, you can hide here. That's a pretty good passport to have. It's a good thing, right? So who's entitled to it? I don't understand, and you're very discouraged in the United States from asking this question for some reason. It's a totally rational
No, I'm not
question.
discouraged.
No, you're not discouraged. Others do. You're like the only person I can have this conversation with. Everyone will be like, shut up, Nazi. It's a foundational question. Are you speaking of an ethnic group or a religious group?
Well, I think you're looking at, for many people, it is religious. There are people who may not have a deep religious connection to Judaism, but they're still Jews.
So it's an ethnic category.
It is ethnic, but it is also religious. It is rooted in religion. You can't take it out of it. Now, that means...
Then how can an atheist...
Well, I will tell you this. There are some people who say, I'm Christian. They never go to church. They never pray. They never read their Bible. They don't tithe.
But they're not entitled to citizenship on the basis of that.
Well,
they're not entitled to...
They still call themselves Christian, even though they identify in that way.
Here's the difference. You're saying that people who have this identification have a deed to a huge chunk of land on the Mediterranean. So there's, it's a right. You keep telling me it's a right. And so it's totally fair to say, if you come to my house and say, I've got the title to your house, I get to ask, may I see it? Where'd you get it?
Can I see it?
And that's exactly what happened here. People from Europe, Eastern Europe, came here, in a lot of cases atheists, and kicked out a lot of people who lived here.
They bought land.
Well, but
they did not just throw people out.
They bought a lot of land. There's no question about that.
They did buy a lot of land.
But they also, in 1948, kicked out a lot of people.
In the war.
It was a war. I agree. Look, I'm not wanting to negate the history. I'm just saying it's a fact, including a lot of Christians wound up fleeing, and they lost their homes, and they've never been allowed back. And all of this was justified on the basis of this identity that is the ticket to the right that you keep referring to. So my question is very simple. I'm going to wait patiently for an answer. Does this right derive from religious affiliation or from genetics?
And I would say it's both. But I would also say that when you said the Christians were kicked out, Tucker, Christianity is growing in Israel. And there is a big lie that goes out there. But no, let me finish this, because
I forgot what I was going to say. I had something important to say. Oh.
I keep hearing that Christians are really not treated well in Israel. That's just simply, that's a lie.
Well, there are lots of different.
There
There are lots of different.
You just get spit on, and they just kill your kids and drink their blood and burn your church down. But besides that, they were some real nice people.
34,000 Christians in Israel in 1948. There are 184,000 Christians here today.
And by Israel, what are you counting?
You talking about the land?
What territory are you counting? I'm counting about Israel proper? Are you counting
about Israel
the West
proper
Bank as well and Gaza? When you say Israel, those numbers apply to what landmass?
It would be in Israel proper. There are 184,000. Now, I'll tell you where Christians are not doing very well. They're not doing very well in the Muslim-controlled countries. There's almost no Christians in Qatar, for example, except those who live in the Christian ghetto, who are the service workers.
I'm sorry. Look, I don't want to argue with you. There are many more.
This isn't just a wallet, it's a rare find. There's something different about owning something almost nobody else has. That's why when Ridge dropped their limited Kintsugi collection,
Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel.
That's not true.
What it actually is true, and I refer you to Wikipedia, Mr. Ambassador.
Wikipedia.
I refer you to the government of Qatar, the government of Israel. These are knowable facts. Like, and I'm
in Jordan.
By the way,
numbers are down. In Syria, the numbers are down. In Lebanon, the numbers are down. I'm just telling you that
about twice as many Christians.
But they live in the enclave. They are not native Qataris.
We're mixing so many different categories here. I'm just saying I get things wrong all the time. You've just gotten something wrong, and I think it's important to acknowledge it. There are many more Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel. Fact.
How many?
Now you caught me. I don't know. I can look at my phone, but I was just there. And there are many more. Whatever. But I just want to get to the point.
Now you caught me.
That forms the basis of this whole conversation, which is who has a right to the land? And you said it's a mixture of religion and ethnicity. Because, as I noted,
that was funny, but he admitted it. You got to be able to do that. It's fun to admit stuff when you're.
Many of the founders, maybe the majority of the founders.
But you know what? A lot of these people are playing dumb because it's money.
Founders of modern
We're all playing this game of dumb.
Israel did not believe in God at all. So they were not religious Jews. They weren't religious at all. They were atheists. They said they were atheists. I believe them. So that suggests it's ethnic. But it's also true, as you well know, because there's a famous court case about that ethnic Jews who convert to Christianity do not have the right of return. That was settled by the Israeli Supreme Court. I'm very confused. So that would suggest it's not ethnicity because you invalidate your Jewishness by converting to Christianity.
There are a number of Messianic Jews who live in Israel who are here.
I'm aware of that.
I'm aware of that number.
But you're not contesting what I'm saying because it's a very famous court case.
The right of return has to do with your grandmother. It has to do with family ties.
It's ethnic.
There's a lot of, sure, ethnicity is a big part of the right of return.
Great.
To make aliyah, to come to Israel, to live here.
Then if both of your parents are Jewish and you have an ethnic right to the land, you are one of Abram's descendants, but you convert to Christianity, how is it you don't have the right to return? I'm totally confused.
But I know a number of people who have returned as
Fuck
Christians,
you, that's why.
but have Jewish history.
Are you
Jewish
saying that Jews who convert to Christianity have a legal right to return? Because I
know that they do. Whether, when you say, do they have a right to return, do they prove?
It's a legal category, as in any government.
Which is by their family history, their grandmother.
True that you invalidate your right of return by converting to Christianity. That's just false.
I don't care about this shit. It's boring.
I cannot quote you the law. If you want me to do that, I'll look at it.
Well, it really matters because you're saying, in fact, people in the United States are being called anti-Semites.
No.
A lot of them, including me,
too,
because they somehow don't believe that Israel has a right to this land.
Do you think Israel has a right to this land?
No, you haven't defined what the land is, and you haven't.
I think somebody